Hello, everybody. Hello, and happy, marvelous Monday. I'm excited that you are joining me today. Listen, I have some information that I want to share. Today, we are discussing 3 tips to establish healthy landlord and tenant relationships. I'm Karissa Spann, the landlord and tenant coach, and this is what I do each and every Monday. Listen, if you are new to my channel, please like, subscribe. If you're on the YouTube channel, please share. If you find this information helpful today, this information is to help landlords, it's to help tenants as well. And so I promise that the information I share today is it's not legal advice, but it's the industry's best practice. And I also share information based off of laws in various jurisdictions. So first and foremost, let me just ask that if you are tuning in live, please drop in the comment box where you're tuned in from. And here's why I share this information or request this information, because I want to know what information I need to share, because from one jurisdiction to the next, the laws are going to be different and things are going to be, things may look different. The laws do change from one state, from one jurisdiction to the next. So thank you so much for tuning in today. If you have comments, go ahead and drop it in the comment section. But today's segment is all about establishing healthy landlord and tenant relationships. So I just want to acknowledge a few people who are here today. And again, I just want to say thank you so much. This is what I do each and every week. And some of you have been following me for some time, and I'm excited to share today tips that will help landlords as well as tenants. Hey, Miss Quick, thank you so much, beautiful. Thank you for tuning in. You're not late. Listen, I came on a little late today. The fact that you're here, I am okay with that. All right. So again, if you have comments, go ahead and drop it in the comment section today. I'm wearing a shirt. Today, I'm wearing a shirt that says, I'm not sure if you can see it. Let me stand up a little bit. That says, I love tenants. Listen, I just want to give a shout out to all of my tenants. And I manage property in multiple jurisdictions. I manage hundreds of families, and I am excited as a housing provider and as a as a landlord, educator, right? So this is what I do each and every Monday, but I also educate landlords, I also coach, I train landlords as well as tenants. I teach college level property management courses as well, pertaining to landlord and tenant matters, not just the laws, but just situations that will help both landlords as well as tenants. So I see that I have some landlords here from the Washington, D.C. area. And so certainly I want to share information for those of you who are tuned in Washington, D.C. All right. If you're tuning in from another jurisdiction, again, please let me know where you're watching from so I can share information that will help you as well as your tenants. Oh, you like my shirt, Miss Quick? Thank you so much. So if you had an opportunity to check out the description, my topic today, I'm sharing 3 tips that will help landlords and tenants establish healthy relationships. And here's why that's important. As a landlord, landlords always want to have good tenants, and it always start with the relationship. How well do you manage that relationship? As well as tenants, the best place to start when you are entering into a new relationship, meaning that you're moving into a new rental property, or maybe there's a new owner or new property manager. Listen, the dynamics of landlord and tenant relationships, they change so frequently, but not all relationships are good relationships. And here's one of the things, one of the examples, if you will, that I always do is I like to paint a picture of getting married, right? If you're entering into a new marriage or a relationship, usually most people don't jump into marriage. They don't jump into bed with somebody that they don't know, right? So you want to take time getting to know each other. And so that all starts with number one, honest communication. Communication is going to be so important. And here's why: because things happen, things change, people change. But as long as there is a clear line of communication, I believe in many cases that will smooth out a lot of wrinkles, that will take off the rough edges, and that will minimize disputes when you have an open line of communication. And so secondly, the one thing that I really take pride in doing is say what you mean and mean what you say. Say what you mean what you say. As a landlord, if you are promising tenants that you're going to make repairs, please keep your word. I understand. Let me just pause here because I am a landlord. I am a housing provider. I'm a property manager. I'm all of those things. Situations happen, emergencies come up, and sometimes it does prevent us from doing what we say that we're going to do. But just because situations come up, okay, it does not negate the fact that if we have given a tenant a promise that we're going to make repairs, that we actually make the repairs. And if we can't, then it is always our responsibility as housing professionals to communicate with the tenant to say, hey, listen, we were scheduled to do repairs today. We were not able to do it, and create or find an alternate date to definitely get in and to make the repairs. Hello, Kaylin Lee. Thank you so much for tuning in, beautiful. So that open line of communication, it will minimize disputes. Say what you mean what you say. Now, let me just pause and talk to the tenants because it's not always the landlord's responsibility. Sometimes tenants, and you know this, correct me if I'm wrong, you know that sometimes you will give your landlord the green light to say, okay, well, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, yes, I'm available on tomorrow to come and make repairs. And then when that day comes, something happens, and all of a sudden, you refuse to allow your landlord in to make repairs. Okay, that's not a good way to establish a healthy landlord and tenant relationship. I get it. Things come up all the time. Life happens to the best of us. But what we can do is say what we mean and mean what we say. True story. Some of you know I've shared previously about a tenant that I had, and I so frequently talked about the tenant from hell. Well, this tenant, now, mind you, I manage hundreds of property. Okay. In addition to managing property, like I said, I teach property management. I have been in the property management industry for well over 28 years. So usually it's not too much that escapes me. Okay. Hey, Chrissy, thank you. I'm sorry, Sissy. Thank you so much for tuning in from Brooklyn. Beautiful. Brooklyn, New York is in the building. So, because nothing usually escapes me, or rather, I'm not surprised by things and tactics that people will use, right? But I've talked about a tenant from hell that I've had for so many years now. I've managed this property for a long time. The owners, they're elderly, sweet people, and they just didn't have the capacity to manage the property. And so they needed some help. I decided to step in. And at the start of that relationship, the young lady, the tenant I'm talking about, the tenant is like she just wakes up on the wrong side of the bed every day. So those of you, you've been following me, you already know the one thing that I always say is happy whatever day of the week it is, right? It could be a Monday. It's happy Monday, happy Tuesday, happy Wednesday, right? Because I take pride in spreading love and spreading joy. And I don't care what I said. Everything was always the wrong thing. It's not a happy Monday. It's not a happy Tuesday. I wish you stopped saying that. Listen, just because a person is having a rough day, a rough week, a rough month, or a rough year, matter of fact, it doesn't even matter if a person is having a rough decade. You cannot allow people to provoke you to respond in a way that does not truly represent your character. Okay. So I've been talking about this tenant from hell for so long, for so many years. Hello, beautiful. Happy Monday. Okay, awesome. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. So, true story, this tenant that I've been talking about for so long, and the only thing that I can do is just pray for her because she obviously does need some help. I've talked about mental health because mental health is really a big issue in a lot of places. And sometimes you don't really know what a person is going through, right? I talk about common sense and how common sense may not be so common for everybody. Well, lo and behold, hey, Miss Gay, thank you so much for tuning in from Brooklyn. Guys, Brooklyn is in the building today. So I received a call from this young lady. I believe it was, today is Monday. I believe I received a call from her on Thursday of last week. I usually um, don't like to answer my phone when she calls because that's how bad it is. And I'll talk to anybody, okay? But I sorely regretted giving this young lady my personal cell phone number. She would call me, she would text me, she would just cuss me out for no reason. So I just stopped answering the phone. It's my right to decline a call, not accept the call or whatever, right? I do have voicemail, and at some point I may return the call. So, but in any event, she reached out to me on Thursday. At first, I was a little reluctant to answer the phone, but I decided to answer the phone anyway. And as I picked up the phone, I said, Happy Thursday, right? What I always do. That's how I answer my phone. I pay the bill, and that's my business, right? So I answered the phone, and she greeted me, and she was nice. Then all of a sudden, um, she just started crying, right? And she was like, Karissa, Karissa. And I'm listening. I'm like, is everything okay? Like, I'm thinking that maybe I need to stop what I'm doing. If I couldn't get to the property, get one of my staff members, one of my assistants to run to the property to make sure this young lady was okay. Right. So she began to tell me how she apologized for how mean she's been to me. She said, Karissa, it's just been so hard. And I know that you really care. I know that you really love me. And I'm so sorry for being so mean. I had to look at my phone like, did she call the right number? So I was really surprised by the call. I was surprised that she apologized because I never expected it. And although we have not had great communication just because of her level of dealing with life, right? Some people just don't know how to cope with bad things that happen to them. And she's one of those individuals where it just seemed like no matter what, she always had a bad day. So anyway, I listened to her, and I told her, I said, listen, I don't take it personal. I don't take assaults. I don't take verbal threats. I don't take those things personally because at the end of the day, I recognize that the battles that I fight, they're not carnal. They're not physical. You know what I'm saying? And so because I don't deal with situations in that manner, I'm not really offended. I'm not really pushed to, or provoked to come out of my character to respond. Now, granted, I am human. I'm not saying I'm perfect. Nobody's perfect. Let's just agree that there is nobody perfect. Sometimes, let's be honest, people can push your button and they can cause you to say or want to do something that you will regret later in life. Well, I respond versus reacting. I like to think about situations before I respond, before I say something that will hurt somebody's feelings, right? Because at the end of the day, I am the professional. I'm getting paid for this. Even if the tenant is having a bad day, I'm still getting paid, right? This is a rental property that's paying me. So I don't have to argue. I don't have to debate. I don't have to, come out of character. I don't have to stoop down to a lower level that does not truly represent who I am. So on this phone call, as the young lady has apologized she apologized at least 20 times for how she has spoken to me, how she treated me, how mean she has been over the years. Listen, I prayed with the young lady and I asked her, I said, listen, I forgive you. Is it okay if I pray with you? That's what I do. I don't hold it against them, right? They have a bad day. They're entitled to have a bad day. But what they are not entitled to do is take their bad day out on me as if I'm the bad guy. So anyway, I prayed with the young lady and I told her, I said, listen, I'm here for you. I've always been here for you. And she apologized and she just kept crying. I don't know what happened. I don't know if she got saved, received the Lord all over again. I don't know. But all I know is this. When it comes to maintaining healthy landlord and tenant relationships as a housing professional, it is always our responsibility to say and do the right thing. And so, again, effective communication is always the best thing to do. Saying what you mean and meaning what you say is always the best thing to do. And then, third and finally, is this: be integral. Be you, but be integral. So whatever you're going to say, whatever you're going to do as a landlord and or as a tenant, always be integral. Nobody can beat you at being you, and nobody can beat you, right? Nobody can beat you up, right? Verbally with their words, unless you allow words to penetrate you. Unless you're the type of person that will allow somebody's negative thought, negative input about you change who you are as a person. And the last time I checked, I don't think anybody on this God-given earth has a hell or a heaven to put you in. So that's being said, you should not allow anybody to make you feel bad. You should not allow anybody to talk to you in a way that is not respecting you and who you are. So these are 3 tips that I'm sharing to help each other, landlords as well as tenants, maintain healthy landlord and tenant relationships. Because at the end of the day, it's not going to change anything. It's not going to change the dynamics of the tenant renting the property and the landlord either managing or owning the property, right? So those dynamics are not going to change. It's always in our best interest to try to work with one another as we're trying to get along, as we're trying to understand how to improve relationships. Sometimes it may be important to take a few steps back. Listen, I promise you, I am the first person that will tap out. I would rather tap out versus responding in a way that will make what I do harder than what it has to be. And so there have been situations I've been in as a tenant. I'm talking about from a tenant's perspective. As a tenant, there were times and situations where I had a landlord who refused to make repairs. She did not understand what her job required of her. And so instead of me being mean and nasty and telling her what she's supposed to do and she's supposed to make repairs and she's a slum landlord and, cussing her out and all that stuff, no, that's not what I did. What I did was I handled it in the most professional way, right? And then unfortunately, it ended up not going so great for her. Whereas, she ended up owing me money because of her mistake. And so why am I sharing this information? I'm sharing this information with tenants so that you will know and understand, first and foremost, your responsibility, so that you will also understand the owner's or the property manager's responsibility. As a landlord, our job as a housing provider, as a property manager, property owner, our job is to make sure that we are providing housing, rental property that's decent, safe, and sanitary. It doesn't matter where the rental property is. It could be in Brooklyn, New York. It could be in Washington, D.C. It could be in Chesapeake, Virginia. It could be in Los Angeles, California. It could be in Dallas, Texas. It could be in Wyoming or Arkansas. We, as housing professionals, we are required to offer and maintain housing that's decent, that's safe, and sanitary. And so that's it. It's no big secret. These are 3 tips to establishing healthy landlord and tenant relationships. And those are really the 3 things that stood out for me when I thought about what I wanted to share with you today, because I recognize that I have a large population of tenants who view my landlord and tenant coaching each and every week. So whether you're tuning in from Facebook or YouTube, I recognize that I have a large population of tenants, but I also have a large population of landlords. And so this is why I share information. Sharing is caring. Please, as a landlord, as a tenant, look for ways to improve the relationship. And if it's not working, sometimes, here's the thing: everything is not meant to work. Sometimes there are just people that you will never get along with, but you don't have to back down from who you are as a person or as an individual. So whatever your role is, whether it's the tenant's role or the landlord's role, understand that each party both have rights. Landlords have rights and tenants also have rights. Okay. All right, so let me go to my phone because I have a text message that came in, and here's a question. How do you handle tenants that play loud music on the third floor and you can hear it on the first floor? All right, great question. Thank you so much for that question. And so, as a landlord, if landlords have tenants who are violating the lease, playing loud music, here's how I would address it. First of all, I would look at what's in the lease. Does the lease, does that legal binding contract that I had with the tenant, does it speak to being a noisy tenant, right? Because if it does, then when I have a conversation with the tenant, I'm just going to remind them of what the lease says. So I will address it by saying, we received, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, we received a complaint today or yesterday about loud music. We appreciate the fact that you want to enjoy listening to music in your home. However, we do ask that you keep the volume down to whatever, right? And I don't usually like to tell people don't play music. I'll just remind them that they do have neighbors. And sometimes it can be offensive if you have tenants who are playing music during times of the day, the evening or night where other tenants may be resting. And so certainly we do care about all of our residents. And that's the message that I would convey. That's the conversation that I would have one-on-one with the tenant. And if it continues to happen, then we have to address it in writing. So the first thing that I would do is have a conversation with the tenant. And if the situation continues to happen, then I'll follow up with something in writing, because it's not what we know, it's what we can prove. So we've had a conversation. And because the problem has continued to go on, we've continued to receive complaints. Now we are putting it in writing because we want to document what's happening in the event that we have to take it to court level. So that's a great question. And then I'm going to answer it from the tenant's perspective. So if you are a tenant and you have one of your neighbors in the apartment building, they're playing their music really loud, I would not recommend addressing that tenant one-on-one unless it's somebody that you know and you're comfortable with. Here's why. Because sometimes disputes and arguments and disagreements can spiral out of control so quickly that before you know it, now the police has to be involved because of something that could have been taken care of from the landlord side. So as a tenant, I would not recommend knocking on your neighbor's door, because you never know what type of day your neighbor is having. I've seen harmless situations turn into nightmares because people don't know how to respond to others. They react versus responding. So if you're the tenant and you have a neighbor that's noisy, that likes to cook food from other countries, and the smell can sometimes be offensive to your nostrils, don't try to correct it. Don't check it yourself. Allow your landlord to correct that situation. Great question. All right, so I'm coming to you, Miss Quick. All right, I have another question here. Is it safe for the tenant to talk to the tenant or let the landlord handle it? Okay, so I think I just answered that, but thank you for that question. Okay, so Miss Quick, how long does it take for a transfer if the judge files for new housing? So it just depends. Great question. That just depends, Miss Quick, on any agency that you're dealing with. And so because we are still in COVID, coming out of COVID, I recognize that a lot of agencies are really slow in the process. So on average, a transfer, let me just answer it two ways. So if the transfer is within the same jurisdiction, a transfer should not take more, it should not take longer than 30 to 60 days. And 60 days is the max, right? So, but again, because of COVID and a lot of people are still teleworking, they're not really in the office. Some of the processes, some of the transfer requests have taken a little bit longer than it really should. So I do hope that helps. And if you want to speak with me offline, Ms. Quick, please inbox me. I would love to know if you're participating in any type of housing program, how I can help guide you, because I believe that you are in my area. So usually if it's a Section 8 question, I'll guide you with getting you in contact with the person at the housing authority that operates, run, or work in the Section 8 program. If it's another program, maybe like rapid rehousing program, I have people who I can refer you to. So please chat with me offline and I'll try to help you as best as I can. All right, Ms. Gay, um, tenants have more to me. The tenant is a hoarder, but good. Other than that, I can charge him for exterminator. Okay, that is a great point. So what I always do is I always look at what's in writing. What is in the lease? What does your lease say? So if you have a tenant and they are a hoarder, right? Is that a violation of your lease? Is it in writing? Does your lease address hoarding? All right. Now, the extermination piece. Does your lease address extermination and who's responsible? Because if it is not in writing, you cannot enforce, unfortunately, something that does not exist. And so in my lease, I have at least a 61-page lease. My lease package is 61 pages long because I cover so much information. It's clear who's responsible for extermination. It's clear that hoarding is a violation of the lease. And so as long as you can justify it in your lease, then yes, you can definitely enforce it. Absolutely. My lease package is at least 31 pages long. True story. Because for me, I treat it like a business. If you treat it like a business, it will pay you like a business. If you treat it like a hobby, well, guess what? It's going to pay you like a hobby. And so this is why I teach. I train and I work with landlords and I coach landlords because it's a business. It's not, we knows what we can prove. And if it's not in writing, we can't enforce it, meaning that we can't make tenants pay for service that we have not given them advance notice to say they're responsible for. Now, I get it. A hoarder, obviously, they're responsible for the bugs, for the mice. I've seen the horror stories. Listen, I was in a rental property today, true story. So I sent the pest control company in there to take care of bed bugs. Now, it is the tenant's responsibility. The tenant is, let me just back up. The tenant is negligent. And it's the tenant's fault that the bed bugs are in that rental property in her apartment. However, the lease that was signed when she moved in was not done with me. And so the previous manager who was responsible for overseeing that rental property was maybe not as knowledgeable and did not know to put it in writing. So because it was not in the lease, I could not charge this tenant for this bed bug infestation. So originally, when I went into the property, I went in to conduct an inspection. So the tenant complained that she has mice. Okay. So I went in now because I am also, in addition to being a property manager, a landlord coach, a landlord educator, I'm also a housing quality standard inspector. So I am a certified housing quality standard inspector. So one of the things that I do when I go in, I'm not just going in based off of what the tenant has complained to me about. When I go in, I'm looking at everything in that rental property. My eyes are on the wall. My eyes are on the door. My eyes are on the floor. My eyes are in the cracks and the corners of the ceiling. And when I look up at the ceiling, I'm looking for black spots or dark spots. I do that because when I look up, I can usually tell if there is bed bugs in the rental property or if it's roach infestation. And so I went there for one thing. And when I looked around, I saw that there was possible evidence that this tenant had bed bugs. So I went in, the tenant's daughter was with me. I asked the daughter, can you please lift up your mom's bed comforter and her sheet? I believe that she may have bed bugs and I just want to confirm it. So I was not prepared to do a bed bug inspection. And certainly I wasn't going to touch it, right? So the daughter, she did lift up the comforter, she lifted up the sheets, and sure enough, the bed was infested with bed bugs. The place is smelled really foul. And so I just asked the daughter and the family to work with their mother to help me to get that rental property back to what it's supposed to be. And that's how you do that as a responsible landlord. That's what you do. So if it's not in writing, you cannot enforce it. And so unfortunately, I could not charge this tenant for infestation, but clearly there were some housekeeping issues, meaning that the tenant was not clean. It was trash everywhere. There was food left out. There was food on the floor, right? And so all of those are welcoming messages that will invite mice and roaches and spiders and ants and bed bugs and rats and other type of things to come into the rental property to live and to stay. All right. Infestation is because of poor housekeeping and untreated issues. And so if you don't treat the problem, it's not going to go away. No problem is going to go away on its own when it comes to rental property. If you treat infestation, you get a handle of it, you usually come out better and on top because the issue does not spread. Okay. All right. So Ms. Davis, thank you for that question, Ms. Gay. Ms. Davis, any update in DC rules in removing a non-paying DC tenant? Listen, yes, absolutely. And thank you for that question, Ms. Davis. So in DC, you can, after December 31st, I believe, you can issue your tenant a notice to vacate. But let me just also state that it must be clear that you have exhausted resources available in the District of Columbia. So all landlords in Washington, D.C. are required to have either applied for assistance for their tenant, okay, through the Stay DC program. And additionally, you have to also show that you have notified your tenant that you are allowing them to enter into a repayment agreement. They have up to 12 months to pay the delinquent amount of rent during COVID. And so these are requirements. But yes, you can definitely do that. You just have to look at the time frame. So also, Ms. Davis, please know that if you do not have a renter's license, or anybody who's watching, if you don't have either a business license or a renter's license in Washington, D.C., and in many jurisdictions, you will have to have that before you get to court level. Because if you don't, the judge could kick out that case and you be back to square one, starting all over again, trying to get a tenant out because they haven't paid you rent, and they get to stay there a whole lot longer while you start that process all over again. So great question. And yes, that is the update for DC. All right. So are there any other questions that I can answer while I'm on today? I want to make sure that I cover as much as possible. And again, this is what I do each and every Monday. Right here on my Facebook channel or my YouTube page, I shared information today, 3 tips to establish healthy landlord and tenant relationships. If you have questions for me, if I'm not online, please go ahead and drop it in the comment section. You can always email me. Let me put my email address up on the screen for you if I can find it, because I want to make sure that I'm answering your questions. Any questions that you have, no matter what time of the day, you can always email me. So here is my email address. So it's going to be karissaspann@gmail.com. Go ahead and email me any questions, any comments, any concerns that you have. Ms. Quick, I'm going to ask you again to definitely chat with me, inbox me, or email me offline. And I will definitely follow up with you. Okay, so I have a question about landlords in New York. Are they required to have a real estate license? Let me check on that. Let me check on that, Sissy. As a matter of fact, I can let you know after I finish this. Let me just look that up for you. And that's a great question. Here's the thing. In many jurisdictions, landlords and housing professionals, they are required to have some sort of education. They are required to have some sort of license, whether it's a real estate license, whether it is a property manager's license. So let me check into that for you, please, Sissy, and I will follow up with you because I don't have that information readily available in front of me. Okay, Ms. Quick, you said, can you explain not for people on government assistance? I'm asking that you restate your question for me, Ms. Quick, because I'm not sure what you're asking. If I can explain not for people on government assistance. And I want to make sure that I'm answering the question for you. So I'll wait for you to just restate your question, Ms. Quick. All right, my email address is going to be Karissa Spann, first name, last name, @gmail.com. That is my email address, Karissa Spann @gmail.com. Thank you for that. So, Ms. Quick, go ahead and please restate your question so that I can answer it for you. Because I want to make sure that I'm covering as much information as possible. So again, if you have questions, if you have comments, remarks, or observations, go ahead and drop it in the comment section. Okay, so for the eviction, okay, so people who are not on government assistance as it pertains to evictions, it depends on the jurisdiction. All right. Every jurisdiction must abide by the laws, right? So if it's the landlord, whether the landlord has a tenant who is in a government program or not, if the tenant is getting government assistance or not, they still are governed by the laws of the land. Okay. So if it's in DC, landlords are still required to give a notice to vacate for non-payment of rent, for lease violations, things of that nature. And if it is for non-payment of rent, landlords in DC are required to show that they have applied for assistance or given the tenant information to apply for financial assistance through the Stay DC program. Now, once that case gets to court, the judge may or may not ask if the tenant is participating in any type of housing program. And so if it is a tenant who is, let's say, a market renter, meaning that they don't have government assistance, they're not getting Section 8, they don't get rapid rehousing, they don't have any type of housing subsidy tied to their rental payment, they are responsible for every penny that is owed for rent. The judge will look at the facts. They will look at the fact that, okay, maybe it is true that the tenant hasn't paid rent, but what assistance have the tenant applied for? Has the landlord applied for assistance to help the tenant? In DC, that's what the judge will look at. And so that's why I'm sharing this information, so that it does not surprise landlords. And then also because there are a lot of places, especially in DC, that tenants can go to get assistance for non-payment of rent. If you are a tenant in DC and if you are delinquent, whether you're in a housing program or not, please reach out to Housing Counseling Services. They're in Washington, DC. Please reach out to Catholic Charity. They are available in Washington, DC. Reach out to these places and get the help that's needed to try to prevent evictions. And so that's the best way that I can answer that, Ms. Quick, because I don't know all the details of this question that you've asked. Okay, so I'm willing to chat with you offline. Okay, Ms. Gay, landlord job to assist them for them to give information. Okay, so I did explain that in DC, before you take a tenant to court for non-payment of rent, landlords are required to show that they applied for the Stay DC program, or you have at least sent the tenant some sort of communication to say, hey, DC has resources. In case you didn't know, DC does have financial resources for you to get money to pay the rent that you owe me. The courts have now changed the requirements for landlords because of COVID, because they recognize that a lot of people have lost their job, were laid off, companies have gone out of business. Okay. All right. So thanks. I see that, Sissy. That's in DC. So because you're in New York, so New York laws are going to be different, right? But it would be in the best interest for landlords to do that. Now, I don't know offhand right now where New York tenants can go. I know there are different boroughs. There's Brooklyn, there's the Bronx, and all of that stuff. I love my Brooklyn family. As a matter of fact, Sissy, I'll be in Brooklyn in a couple more weeks. So I will definitely get more information. Ms. Gay, let me know, inbox me, let me know if you're asking this question from the landlord's perspective or from the tenant's perspective, so that I can get you the resources and answer the question, so that you have a better understanding of how to navigate, and also so that you can help others. All right. So thank you all for your questions. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your comments. I do always appreciate the feedback. This is what I do. I enjoy doing this. I promise you that it costs us absolutely nothing to jump online, for me to share this information, for you to receive this information and share it with others. But I promise that it could cost landlords thousands of dollars if they are doing something, whether they are doing it intentional or not. Okay. So it costs nothing to get this information, but it can cost a whole lot if you violate the law. Okay. Because tenants are allowed to sue, and tenants are suing. Even in the pandemic, tenants are suing landlords for illegal evictions. Tenants are suing landlords for fair housing laws being violated, because again, tenants do have rights. Even if they're not paying rent, even if they're tearing up the property, tenants do have rights. So make sure that you know and understand, as a landlord as well as a tenant, what your rights are, what you can and cannot do. So my time is up. I thank you for yours. I hope that you will join me next week, same time, same station, right here on either my Facebook or my YouTube channel. I'm Karissa Spann, the Landlord and Tenant Coach, and I appreciate you all. Please make sure that you are tuning in. I do want to put a link up in case you have questions about HUD and fair housing laws. Here is a link to visit HUD's website. Please go online, look up fair housing laws, and this will give you a lot of information in terms of what landlords can do, what landlords cannot do. There are a whole lot of resources available in the community. Okay, so that's the website for HUD. Please check it out. And again, if you have any questions, please email me. All right. I'm always available to answer your questions. Email me whether I'm online or not. My email address is karissaspann.com, first name, last name @gmail.com. All right. So I will see you all next week.